welcome to Your Choice 2021 special election coverage on HOMTV. I'm Ben Gretchko. On May 4th, Meridian Township voters in the Okemos Public School District will see two proposals on the special election ballot. One is the Okemos Public Schools Operating Millage Renewal Proposal, and the other is the Okemos Public Schools Sinking Fund Proposal. Joining me today is Okemos Public Schools Superintendent John Hood to discuss these proposals. John, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
So first, could you tell me a little bit about the proposals and also what the ballot language asks of the voters?
Sure. So there are the two proposals. The first is a non-homestead millage renewal. And that's a little confusing to our voters. So I want to take a minute just to explain what that means. When Proposal A passed in 1993, Michigan property taxes were structured and reduced and really divided into two categories, homestead and non-homestead. So this is a non-homestead ballot initiative, which does not include primary residences. So it includes, businesses, rental properties, vacation homes, land, buildings, but doesn't apply to primary residences or the primary home that someone's staying in. So voters have the option every so many years to renew this millage. It's 18 mills, which is a significant, generates significant funding for school districts. And the state kind of assumes that districts have this 18 mills passed to help establish the budget. The last time we did that was in 2007, and it's up for renewal again this year.
So,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I thought you were done. Please go ahead.
Yep. The second one is the Building and Site Sinking Fund, which is a different fund. That's a fund that I think this will be our second renewal, maybe with taxpayers. It's 10 years long, and it's used to alleviate the general fund of other expenses the district may have, but it's got classified categories in which we can spend it. So we can spend it for upkeep and maintenance of district buildings and other things like security and technology, which is a new addition to this, with recent legislative changes that allow us to expand the use. And it really just alleviates the general fund, the fund that our curricular programs come out from having to spend that on those types of items. Yep.
So you mentioned a bit about the history about the operating millage proposal. Could you talk a little bit more about if there's any other history behind it, other things that it's funded, how many times has it been renewed?
So for the non-homestead, that's just been since 1993 with the Proposal A, the shift in property taxes. And the district could levy that, I believe it's up to 20 years at a time. We're choosing to do 10 years and have that coincide with the building and site election, just to have them on the same ballots and not have to fund additional elections that might be out of sync with each other. Just a good use of our taxpayer dollars and our voter time. But the building and site fund is really on the other end is really a way for districts to have money to spend on roofs and boilers and carpet and security and things of that nature that otherwise would have to come out of, again, the general fund, which is where we pay for our programs.
So just a bit, so you mentioned those things that it helps. Just a bit about, especially today, we've got a pandemic. It's really affected schools all around the country. Would this operating millage help somewhat? Could it help somewhat in relation to particularly like classrooms and like other elements of a building?
Yeah, so great question, Ben. So that question actually applies whether it's a pandemic or not, because we have one pot of money, our general fund, on which we have to pay our employees, provide our programs, and upkeep our buildings. buy buses, things of that nature. And the only other monies we get from our taxpayers are if there's bonds passed or millages passed. And our taxpayers in 2019, passed a bond for us, a $24.9 million bond to do some upgrades to our buildings, buy new buses, do some technology replacements, things of that nature. But other than that, any extra spending we want to do comes out of that general fund. So we know there's going to be needs because of the pandemic, because of learning loss, because of trauma that students have. And we are getting some funding starting to come through, filter down through the federal and state government for pandemic relief that'll be targeted for pandemic relief. But just in general, if these don't pass, we will have expenses still to fund for the district, and they're going to come out of that general fund.
Right. So just overall, or excuse me, I'm sorry, jumping ahead of myself here. So with regard also to the operating levy, why was it decided to leave it where it is, like the current operating levy?
Yeah, so both of these actually, the operating, the non-homestead is that's the amount we can levy. So the 16 mills is what we can do, and that's what we've done in the past, and we can't do more than that. And so we're keeping that status quo. So that's not an increase for our taxpayers. It's just a renewal and an extension, actually. And again, it's not applying. It won't raise anyone's taxes who it's not on their primary residence. So it's only, again, for rentals, businesses, land, other buildings, things of that nature is who that is directed at. In terms of the building and site fund, we, again, are not asking for any more than is currently being levied. We have levied 1 mill in the past, and that erodes over time because property taxes change. And we're just asking the taxpayers to roll it forward at its current rate. So again, it won't be asking for any additional money from our taxpayers. What it does do is extend the term and broadens the definition of use. So now we can include technology and security in that funding.
Okay. So if approved, how would both of these proposals help the district?
So we rely on them to help fund programs, help replace roofs, help with upkeep in our buildings. And again, if voters vote no, they're going to see a decrease in the current taxes they're paying, but they're also going to see an impact on the school's budget and buildings and what we can provide for our students. So certainly that's in the hands of the voters. If the voters vote yes, they're not going to see a change in their tax structure, and will relieve the general fund of those additional expenses.
So you said that there will be, sort of like a decrease in the school funds or district funds. I asked a bit earlier how the proposal could help offset pandemic costs. So I'm just curious now as to how the school budget as it is now, how has that been affected as a result of the pandemic?
In terms of the pandemic, it's been it's been an interesting impact. Our revenues are down in terms of community ed programs. We've really cut back on our rentals. Our childcare programs have been limited so we could distance and put safety protocols into place for our childcare programming. Any extra activities, clubs, camps that we might have done last year didn't occur. So we're starting to just get those back online and kind of re-expand the community ed program that we offered that really contributed money actually back to the general fund, and that makes some money for the district, especially our childcare program. Food service, our food service program, which is doing meals after hours for families because we don't have kids eating breakfast or lunch at schools, has seen an impact too. That normally makes some money for the district and again contributes back to the general fund. So the revenues are certainly down. We lost about 100 students and we're funded on a per pupil basis. So we took a hit there. Getting less students at school means less money for the district to spend. So we're hoping that these come back online and help help alleviate some of the pressures that we've seen. But Okemos was very proactive last spring when we saw this happening. We went into a very conservative budgeting mode. We cut the budget, cut some positions, cut some programs, cut from other areas of our budget, like materials and professional development, things of that nature, to make sure we were positioned to navigate the pandemic. So again, the bond and the millage don't directly, we're not asking for these because of the pandemic. That all just helps relieve the general fund so we can focus that on building the best instructional program we can for kids.
Were those cuts temporary or permanent cuts?
So unless the board acts to bring those cuts back on, which we'll consider this spring, I won't take action as superintendent to reinstate those because the board removed them. The board needs to be the one to add them back. So the board has added a few back already because our financial position was better than we expected. And we'll continue to evaluate that as we're planning for next school year.
Also, just going back to the community ed program for a second, was all of those things that had to change, was that because of just COVID protocols, or was that just because of budget issues?
Mostly COVID protocols. We were in the middle of a shutdown then, so we wanted to be really cognizant of bringing outsiders into our schools, or to have some events where we're doing field trips offsite. If we couldn't keep kids safe, we weren't going to offer, or staff safe, we weren't going to offer the programs. In terms of reduced capacity for childcare, again, we know that's a critical infrastructure for our community, those working in our community that need that. And we wanted to offer that, but in a safe way that didn't transmit disease and put those students in childcare at risk, or the families when they're picking up kids. So we had to reduce density as part of the safety protocols, which you reduce density, we still have the same staffing costs because we had still to staff the program. So that just hits your bottom line.
Moving back to the millages, you mentioned earlier about what could potentially happen if these proposals do not get approved. So why do you believe voters should approve these proposals?
So, being a public servant, I have to make sure I'm factual in my approach so the voters can make their choice. And because their taxpayer dollars are what funds this and what funds my salary. So certainly I can speak factually about what some of the impacts would be. So our sinking fund, for example, generates about $1.3 million a year for the district that we spend on things like roofing projects. Our roofs are coming out of warranty, and we have to start a scheduled replace and reseal of the roofs on our buildings. We have sidewalk and parking lot repairs that we need to do or resurface. We'd like to upgrade our parking lot lights to more energy efficient, green friendly LEDs for energy and cost savings long term. And again, there's security we can upgrade. Some of our cameras are aging, some of our electronic door locks. We've replaced some of those with the prior bond, but we could certainly replace more of those. And we've reached out to our community now a number of times saying, fund a tech bond. Well, this would generate the money ongoing to fund technology replacement cycle. And we know technology has become a part of the instructional programming, and we wouldn't have to go back out to the community and reach out for a tech only bond. It would be rolled into this building and site fund. So, if you take that $1.3 million a year, which we spend, and take it out of the general fund, something's got to give out of the general fund. So again, it's a way to keep that away from programming, keep that away from the instructional delivery for kids.
So if one or both of these proposals don't get approved, what would the school district do to make up for those funds?
So again, it would have to come out of our general fund. If the 18 mills doesn't get approved, that will be very, very significant. Again, the state kind of assumes that's going to be a major part of the base of your funding. So that would certainly be significant. And then the 1.3 million a year would have to come out of the general fund or our fund balance. A district's fund balance is kind of the district's savings account per se. And our auditors recommend you have between 12 and 15% fund balance just to be a healthy organization. Okemos is hovering around 10-11%. We've slowly come up from where we were during the recession back in the early 2000s when we were in the single digits, but not quite where we want to be yet in terms of just making sure we have a strong financial position for our districts. So when we do need to borrow money, we're getting better rates there for our community as well.
So you said if that 18 mils doesn't get approved, it would be significant. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
I'd have to get the exact numbers for you. I don't have the percentage of our budget that would be, but it would be millions. It would be millions of dollars for us. And I'd be happy to come back with you and give you an update on that.
Okay. Is there anything else that you think the voters should know about these two proposals?
Again, I just reiterate that it's not an increase, either one. Remind them that the non-homestead is really going to our businesses and our rental properties and property and other structures. It's not charged to a primary residence. And then that building and site fund for things that happen in the district, general repairs we need, unexpected boiler breaking, things of that nature that we can kind of keep away from kids in their programming. So that's really what I want people to understand is we're not asking for any more than we currently have. We're just kind of rolling it forward for our taxpayers. We know pandemic's been rough on our taxpayers as well. We know our senior citizens have limited incomes, and this has been hard on them too. So Okemos Schools is committed to continuing to meet the needs of our seniors through our senior center, which we do in collaboration with Meridian Township. And the repairs and upgrades to the buildings include and the technologies and security supports in this building and site fund would continue to support the senior center as well.
Okay, I will leave it there. John Hood. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ben. A pleasure to be with you.
No problem. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Ben Gretchko. Once again, thanks for watching Your Choice 2021 special election coverage on HOMTV for the May 4th special election in Meridian Township.